Hello, I'm Nick Tyrone, neoliberal centrist dad. Long-time listeners, viewers, will note that I am not in the Bloomsbury studio. This is only because I will keep using Bloomsbury and the studio because it's wonderful, and Barrett's a wonderful producer, and it's great. It's just sometimes it's hard to get in, and so I'm going to try to do more of these, at home and see how it goes. Mostly because actually the Bloomsbury's big plus is the studio, the mics, and the quality of sound. And I think I've rigged up enough of a thing here that the sound is pretty commensurate. At least I hope. Please tell me otherwise in the comments. Thank you for joining me. This video, as you will no doubt know from the title, is about how the Iranian theocracy is the bad guys. That doesn't necessarily mean Israel is the good guys, but I do think they're the better guys in this particular conflict. And I think broadly they're probably doing the West a favor in terms of what they're doing in Iran. And I know that will be controversial with many of you, and we're going to get into it. First of all, let's talk about the basics of what's happened. Israel has attacked Iranian nuclear facilities. This is a large-scale attack involving something like 200 Israeli planes, attacking around about 100 sites across Iran. And several generals have been killed. Several scientists have been killed. It's a big deal. Iran have counterattacked. They bombed Tel Aviv, and I think other places in Israel, but don't quote me on that. But I know Tel Aviv has been hit quite badly. And yeah, I think I want to break this down because actually what a lot of people are saying is a common line on the left is Iran has done nothing. They have been totally peaceful, and the Israelis are warmongers, and they've started this, and it's all Israeli aggression, and Iran have completely clean hands. I think it's worth talking about Iranian interference in the politics of across the Middle East, because I think a lot of people, particularly on the left, don't seem to be aware of this, or I mean, maybe they're being willfully ignorant. I don't know, but if I'm going to just at least try and approach this, that they're acting in good faith, let's pretend they don't really know the facts. So Iran has been heavily involved in funding Hamas and Hezbollah. I mean, Hezbollah particularly. I mean, Hezbollah are basically almost a sort of terrorist foreign wing of the Iranian theocracy, whereas Hamas, it is different. They get funding from loads of different places, but one of them is Iran, and Iran has given them probably something like $100 million every year for a long time. They're now apparently giving them much more. Some people are saying it's like 350 million. Those numbers are unconfirmed, but it would make sense that their funding has increased since October 7th, 2023. That's beyond what Iran has given Hamas and Hezbollah consistently in terms of intelligence. So Iran are a massive state that have huge intelligence capabilities that would be on the scope of someone like Hamas and definitely Hezbollah. And that's been pretty huge in terms of what they've been able to do. But I think more than that, I think one of the big things that Iran has given to Hamas and Hezbollah. I think one of the ways that Iran, let's put it in another way, I think one of the ways that Iran has been particularly pernicious in terms of prolonging the conflict between Israel and Palestine, and therefore causing continued suffering of the Palestinian people, is they have pushed a narrative where if the Palestinians just go a little bit harder, they just go a little bit, they just need one more intifada or whatever it is, and they will, basically they will push the Israelis out. However that actually looks is never sort of actually practically quantified. Does that mean everyone in Israel, all the Jews leave? It's never really specified for a particular reason, because it's basically a utopian vision that really has no hope of ever being reality. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the Palestinians get to bear the brunt of this, not anyone in Iran or, well, indeed anywhere else in the Middle East. So what the hell? And again, it's the Palestinians who suffer. One of the reasons this is so important, I think, and I'm talking about it now, and it isn't just a sort of, well, this is an unfortunate thing that's happening in another part of the world, is the Western left have essentially taken on Palestine as the thing. It has now become the absolute most important thing, top of the list. It is the defining issue for the left now, I would say. And that, I'm really sorry to say, is totally insane. It's totally insane for several reasons, one of which is most of the leftists who are taking it up and talking about it nonstop and are obsessed with it don't seem to know very much about the region or about Palestine or about Israel or about the history of the conflict. They mostly have very bad information that's generally put out by propaganda sources, probably originating in Iran somewhere along the line, or at least funded by Iranian theocratic money. And yeah, this is just they buy into it as well. I think the Western left have bought into the Iranian propaganda line that if the Palestinians just push a little harder, they will win, whatever that means. And that's not going to happen. I mean, it's just not going to happen. I'm really sorry. If this is your big political dream or the thing that you hold, you hang utopian hope upon, but Israel's not going anywhere. And you can say that's a good thing or a bad thing or a neutral thing. Just for practical purposes here, in terms of what should happen and what would bring peace to the region and what would actually stop the suffering of the Palestinian people, is not pursuing some utopian idea that the Palestinians are going to win some sort of war against Israel. And indeed, America, who will, I think we can probably safely say now, will probably support Israel to the end. So there's no victory in sight. And in fact, all that happened with October 7th, 2023 is lots of Palestinians have died. I mean, if you really want to look at it and boil it down, that's the result. And I don't think that's a good thing. And I don't think trying to continue with this is good. And I know now people on the left are going to jump at me and say, well, it's Israel. Israel's the aggressor, and they're the ones who keep this war alive. Okay, but just imagine for a second that Hamas gave all the kidnappers back. They basically came to the table and said, look, we want to lay down all arms. We'll accept any terms. We just want to end the suffering of our people. You'd have a lot more people like me kind of backing you up, on your side. You'd sort of say at that point, well, okay, if Israel are going to continue to go at this after Hamas have surrendered, maybe I have to look at this and wonder. I mean, I want to say, by the way, I don't have any stake in this game at all. And in fact, one of the things about this that I find so difficult is one of the things that I really cared about in probably the last decade was the war in Syria, because I saw what was happening and what Assad was doing, and spoke to some people on the ground. Was in Lebanon and spoke to some people who were refugees, and what was going on there was something that was probably akin to a genocide. I mean, basically, you had the Syrian government targeting cities indiscriminately, civilians indiscriminately. There was a clear sort of sense of, let's kill as many Sunni Muslims as we possibly can do, by the Assad regime, obviously, who are Alawites, Shia Muslims. And that really felt like a genuine sort of, these people want to wipe these people off the map. And at best, the left didn't care, and they said, this is not our business. This is something that's going on thousands of miles away. Why do you care so much about this? At worst, they said, actually, we probably think Assad's the good guy. He's a doctor. Don't you know that doctors are good guys? So I heard a lot of that. I mean, to be fair, a lot of it was not that. That was a minority. The majority was, look, this is happening a long way away, and who cares, and why do you care so much about it? So it just seems rich that now this is their number one thing. So it's happening in pretty much the exact same region of the world. Like, now this is their obsession. And now I'm like, well, okay, why do you care so much about this? Particularly given, like, I'm really sorry to say, but probably when you try and look at this as objectively as possible, you trying not to take anybody's side, the Israelis or the Palestinians or anybody else, you just try and look at it objectively. At the very least, it's complicated. I mean, I think that's the worst I can say. Like, I mean, that's probably the strongest thing I can say. You can't say you can't just say October 7th, 2023 didn't happen, because it did, and it was horrible. And I'm really sorry. Like, if you imagine, for instance, just for a moment, all right, people in England, and if you're elsewhere, you can imagine something similar with a neighboring country. So in England, imagine if, a horde of Frenchmen crossed the Channel and killed 1,200 people in one day, and then took a whole hundreds of others hostages, okay? And then the French government said, yes, we're behind this, and we will do it again and again. I mean, what do you think would be a reasonable response? And you know what I find? I think a lot of, if it was them threatened, you'd find a lot of the leftists who have no sympathy whatsoever for the Israeli position suddenly saying, let's go in and kill as many Frenchmen as possible. And if you doubt this, what I would say is I worked on a campaign. I'll tell you what it was. It was the AV campaign. So it was on the yes side of the AV campaign. And there were a lot of young leftists working on that campaign. And one of the things that was interesting to me about them was, I mean, these were very, very hard left people. These were people who, a classic thing I had a problem with was we had a clause in their contracts that said if you get arrested, we can sack you, basically. And they said, well, does it matter what we get arrested for? Because these were the type of people who went on demos and got arrested. So, I mean, we're talking like devoted, hard left people. And I remember there was this one time where we had a local organizer who was not working out. They just weren't working out. They were doing a bad job, right? I think objectively they were doing a bad job. And so I said to them, they said to me, okay, we want to sack this guy. And I said, okay, we need to do it this way. We need to issue a letter. We need to issue a warning. We need to blah, 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 like all the stages that you need to go through. And they said, why can't we just sack him? Why can't we just sack him and get rid of him so he's sacked today? And I said, because you guys have demonstrated repeatedly to get workers' rights that tell us that we can't do that. Sorry about the noise. It's something's going on. I don't know. It's a fire alarm of some description. I'm sure I'm not burning down, and it'll go away. There we go. Sorry about that. Anyway, all added to give you the verite feel that I want to put into these. So anyway, what was I talking about? I was talking about leftists, and you guys have fought for workers' rights, but as soon as it's turned on them and they are in the position where they have to, they're in charge and they have to face a hard situation, they suddenly become very right-wing. It's quite remarkable. And I think this is true of most people. Most people can be I think this is one of the reasons I've just hit on, really, when I think about it, why Palestine is so easy to get into, because it's abstract to people in the West. You're not there. All you can see is like, Israel are the oppressors, the Palestinians are the victims. It's all very simple. It's all very wonderful, and has nothing really to do with your own life. And so it feels okay. I think here's what the problem is this is really bad for left-wing politics. And I'll tell you why. Because while the left are obsessing about Palestine and just won't stop thinking about it and won't stop talking about it, the right are thinking about, everything else, right? They're thinking about all the stuff that people in Britain, for instance, or in France, whatever, I mean, wherever in Europe, actually, this is pan-Europe. This is pan-European. The right-wing parties and activists are thinking about things that people really care about, whether you like it or not. I mean, whether you care about them or not. But, the economy, how crap people's lives are, migrant hotels, things like that. I mean, again, you can say, I don't care, migrant hotels. Okay, fine. But you probably don't live in a crappy town where the biggest hotel in town is filled with migrant men. And that's, I'm really sorry to say that. I know that's like a thing you're not supposed to really say, but I have been to those towns, and that is the reality. And that's what the right are talking about, okay? And they're connecting with people. It's why Reform are on 30% in the polls, okay? Because they're talking about stuff that people care about. the left can't seem to ever make a breakthrough, and that's because they don't talk about working class living conditions or working conditions or any of that stuff, really, particularly at all. What they talk about is Palestine, which frankly most of the country doesn't care that much about. At the very least, they certainly don't care about it like you care about it, right? They might have an opinion on it, which might be pro-Israeli, it might be vaguely pro-Palestinian, whatever it is. At the end of the day, they don't really care about it, and it probably isn't going to affect the way they vote. I don't think for 90% of people in Britain, certainly, and I don't know enough, I don't have a confidence to say that about, I don't know, France or Germany or Spain or Italy, but I would be surprised if it wasn't a similar number. You know, people feel like they're struggling, whether they are or they aren't, and you can have all sorts of statistics to say we're safer and richer than we ever have been, etc. Exactly. I think the problem is that people feel like we're in decline, and to some extent that's probably true, or at the very least we're flatlining economically, as the West generally. I mean, less so America, but now Trump will have taken care of that, and they'll join the rest of us in flatlining or declining. So, you basically, that's the board at the moment, right? The right talking about stuff that people like and people care about, and the left talking about Palestine. And bringing this all the way back, because I don't want this to go on too long, and I want to try and keep these videos short and sweet, Iran as the bad guy. Now, one of the things I want to stress is I'm not talking about the Iranian people. I know people are going to be like, Iran has great people. Iran has amazing people, okay? In fact, that's one of the reasons I can't stand the Iranian theocracy, and why I think they're so bad is because they really hold back what I think would otherwise be like a really fantastic country that could do great things. I genuinely think. They're being ruled by a bunch of like medieval mullahs, and who really seem to just care mostly about oppressing women. And I just think that's a terrible thing for Iranians, you know? And they're having all their oppressing women, to be fair, and destroying Israel. So anyway, I'll tell you a story about Iran. It's not really about Iran, but it's about Iranian people and preconceptions one can have that are completely incorrect and actually quite false and poor. During the 2006 World Cup, oh God, I'm really sorry. The fire alarm's gone off again. Anyway, World Cup 2006, right? A bunch of friends of mine, we had this whole idea that we would go to pubs where that sort of represented the nation. So like a German pub when Germany was playing somebody, or a Polish pub when, etc., right? And so we managed to find an Iranian sort of bar. It was somewhere in West London, somewhere. Anyway, the whole point was it was an Iranian bar. And we were joking on the tube on the way there. I mean, quite shamefully when I think back on it, really, about, it's going to be men smoking cigars. This is before this is when you could still smoke in pubs, sort of fat men smoking cigars and sort of pondering, sort of on the football in front of them. And when we got there, it was all young women in skimpy outfits waving Iranian flags. I mean, it was amazing, and I think of it because it is actually a classic example of don't think you know something about a people or a place that you haven't been to. Don't think you know something about a culture that you don't know really that much about, because it'll surprise you. And ultimately, people are people. That's the whole thing. And it's, I care about the fate of the Palestinian people. That's why I want, I want them to stop being manipulated by Iranian theocrats and, frankly, some psychotic Western leftists who are telling them that, if they just keep blowing up enough of their people, they'll somehow win, even though the victory can never be defined. Anyway, I'll close it on that. I probably have a lot more I could say about this, but like I say, I want to keep it short and sweet. Hope you like this. Hope you got something out of this. As you say, I'm going to try and do more of these from home, just because I think it's a bit easier. Also, one of the things about being in the studio at Bloomsbury, like, it's a time thing. Like it happens when it happens, and maybe I had it actually last week. I did one, and I really wasn't in the mood for it at all. By the time I got there, it just wasn't clicking. I was tired. I'd probably had a busy day, and I just was like, oh God, I'm gonna talk in front of the mic, and I did it, and I pulled it off, and it was fine. But I didn't feel. I remember leaving feeling like, oh, that really wasn't my best work because I was just tired and not in the mood. Whereas if I'm doing it at home, I can do it when it just clicks in, when I just feel like, hey, now's the time. Let's do this. So anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'm Nick Tyrone, neoliberal centrist dad. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and just be on the lookout. I'll keep making these, and yeah, keep the comments civil. He says knowingly, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.